Hi everybody, welcome back to Read and Reread. I'm Angelia and today it's time for Friday Reads on January 20th. I'm kind of shocked that it's already January 20th. It's like 3/4 of the way through the month and everyone's always like, oh, the time has flown and all that, but I don't know, it kind of did. I still have that getting started in the year feeling. I'm still trying to watch all of the best of videos and plans for 2023 and all of that. I don't know. I feel like I don't know if I'm behind or if everybody's still just kind of putting them out gradually. I don't know. But so, first of all, TV shows. Last night we finished a show and started a show. So, we've been watching the morning show the past couple of weeks and we have enjoyed it. I don't think season 2 was as good as season 1 because they lost that kind of tight focus on one particular crisis at a news station, and then they sort of splintered off into, it got a little melodramatic. Like there was like so many side issues and stuff like that going on, and it was a little bit soap opera-ish. Right, so we got to the end of that. I think there is going to be a season 3. They kind of cut it off where the COVID crisis is rolling in and starting to affect people on the show. Then we started watching Station 11, which I've wanted to see ever since it came out, but I didn't have HBO until recently. And I thought that I would be immune from comparatitis because I read the book a long time ago and maybe I wouldn't be aware of the changes. But right away, Stephen and I were both like, wait a minute. In the book, didn't were those two people together right then? And did that happen like that? And wasn't it his brother? And da 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 da. So I had, of course, immediately look up one of those articles about book versus movie. And it's okay. We did enjoy the first episode. We're going to continue, but I just cannot. I just have to do that every time. All right, let's talk about the books. I last week I think where I ended off was I was kind of halfway through Dangerous Liasons, and I've been reading this for the Classics and Company book group that is on Discord, and I have linked that a couple times. I'll put it in again. But so anyway, I finished the book, and this was a reread. I kind of knew how it ended from reading it before and seeing the movie and everything, but basically you have a dueling pair of just ruthless, fairly heartless individuals who play very diabolical games with the people around them. And all I can say, I don't want to do any spoilers if you will read this book yourself, but if two people are that awful and they have all the goods of one another, that itself is a ticking time bomb. So Dangerous Liasons was, it was fun to read. By the time you get to the end, the fun has kind of boiled out, and then it's just kind of, you're just kind of watching a bunch of explosions and train wrecks as the after effects of all of their misdeeds sort of, come to their fruition. But I did enjoy it, and I've been enjoying the discussion as well in the group. Then moving into the 21st century and beyond, I read How High We Go in the Dark by Sequoia Nagamatsu. And this was a book that I got for Christmas that I've been wanting for quite a number of months. I've been hearing about it off and on, and it just sounded like something that was right up my alley, and it really, really is. So this book, in the other people's reviews, it is often suggested for fans of Cloud Cuckoo Land, Station 11, Sea of Tranquility, and Cloud Atlas. I have never read Cloud Atlas, but I've read all the others and loved them. And I really do love that kind of book that has multiple storylines and or narrators, and that it sort of weaves together and you don't really understand how it all relates until the very end. And I do also love speculative fiction. I like a little science fiction, probably more than I do like fantasy, actually. But so this book, I started to read it, and then almost immediately I had to stop and go look up some kind of backstory on the author in this book. And what I learned was his first novel, but he's been working on it for more than 10 years. And in the interim, he published a collection of short stories. And this book is actually interrelated short stories that collectively form a novel. And many of the different separate stories have been published at different times in perhaps a different version along the way in various literary journals. So he's been writing these pieces all along, and then he has knit them together into this novel, which raised an interesting question to me about when a novel is comprised of related stories. Because last year I read Night of the Living Res, and which I love, and I've read other books as well in this format. Now, Night of the Living Res was presented as related short stories. You know, they're all about one particular character at different points in his life, and it moves backwards and forwards in time. This book is stories, but it's presented as a novel. So my first question was, well, is that just an arbitrary decision by the author of how they want to present the work, or is there some sort of criteria for whether it's short stories or it's a novel? And I really don't know the answer to that for sure, but I do say that after having read this, I do understand why it's a novel. And one reason is that each story continues moving forward in time, and it is all bound together by the end. The way that it is interrelated is that there are characters that appear in more than one story. At different times, they might be the main character. At other times, they might be a background character. And they all are essential to the ultimate, I don't know, theme or plot wrap up. But what we have here basically is it's a pandemic novel, and Sequoia Nagamatsu did not know that when he finished this book and turned it in for publication, that it was going to come out in a pandemic, and it was not intentional. And he also, I saw in an interview, he's tired of people commenting on it as being prescient and things like that, because that wasn't really, I mean, it just sort of happened, but it is kind of eerie, some of the things that happen in this book. Anyway, so what happens is there is, at the beginning of the story, the first story, there is an archaeological site in the Arctic, and a young girl has been frozen in the ice for like 30,000 years, and due to climate change, things are thawing out, and the researchers are testing different things that are thawing out, and they're finding bacteria and viruses and things like that. But they find this entire young girl, and this is a huge archaeological find. And one of the researchers, who was a climate change activist, also has accidentally died in the course of this research. He fell into a ravine. And her father, who is a renowned archaeologist, comes out to the Arctic to lend a hand and carry on a little bit with this research and find some closure for what may have happened, and some healing in his relationship with his daughter who has passed. And the main overarching theme of this book is presented, which is loss and grief and regrets. Family issues, estrangements, and how we deal with death. All these are really, really important in the story, in each and every story. And so he is coming to terms with his entire lifelong relationship with his daughter, Clara. He and his wife are now taking care of Clara's daughter, and he wants to he's thinking about how he is talking about Clara to her and presenting her life to his granddaughter and moving forward. And so he is doing a lot of reflecting. But the minute that he gets there to the site, everything goes into a quarantine, because they have revived a virus, and they're studying it and trying to make sure that they don't accidentally let out something dangerous. Spoiler alert, they let out something dangerous. But this is the beginning of the story is that this virus gets reactivated, and it goes on to it's called the Arctic Plague, and it goes on to create an almost decade-long effect on the entire Earth. So that's what we have to start out with. Moving forward from that story, each story goes a little bit further along in the evolution of the plague and the human response to it. And it brings up so many issues of the rituals surrounding death and dying, the human cost and reaction to grief and loss, the regrets of people when they don't have time left or they didn't connect or say the things they wanted to say. There's also issues about the commercialization of death and how we kind of take that for granted in regular life, but when all of a sudden there's this huge dramatic increase in people dying and we have to do something with their bodies, and how new industries pop up to address this. And it's and the people who work for those industries. There's scientific efforts. Some of the stories are about different researchers that are trying to work on these problems and try to find a cure or a treatment for the disease. The disease, it comes in waves. It's so weird that he didn't know anything about the plague we were about to have when he wrote this, because it comes in surges and waves, and the first surge primarily wipes out children hard and fast. And you can't help but think, if that had happened to us, how would the course of things have gone differently? And it's a terrible thing. And then it moves on, and it's a different disease, and it moves in different ways than the one that we have experienced in real life. But it just there's a lot of things to think about here. It is a sad book, but it is not a hopeless book. And some of the stories, the way that it is episodic, for me, some of the stories were more resonant or hit me harder than others. Some of them, there was one that just didn't really work for me, that just seemed a little too Black Mirror, but by the end of the book I kind of understood why it was there and how it fit in. So if you read this book and you feel like you hit kind of a place where you don't really relate, just kind of keep going, because it all has to be there, and you understand you have to go all the way to the very end to fully understand. But I really do feel like I need to read the book a second time with what I know about the ending to appreciate the connections and the strands that are in there all along. It was very good. It does fit in thematically with those other books, but it's a different story with different characters. And also another thing that I don't think I mentioned was that all of the main characters throughout the story are Japanese or Japanese American. It's just really good. And I don't think that it suffers from being one with those other books, because it really does, it has its own story to tell. So that was How High We Go in the Dark by Sequoia Nagamatsu. I'm very interested to see what he writes next. Now, because that wasn't enough of heavy topics and sad situations, I went ahead and started reading Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. This book, it's moving fast. I'm almost halfway through, and I've only been reading it for a few days. I thought it was going to be a lot slower of a book, because it's pretty long. It's about 550-ish pages, 540-something pages. But it is moving along pretty swiftly, because I have been spending a lot of time on it. I am really engrossed in the story of young Demon, or Damon as his given name is. And I know that this book is inspired by or patterned by or gives nods to David Copperfield. And I haven't read David Copperfield, so I can't really comment on this yet, but I do plan to read it this year, because I want to see how that goes together. But for me, what it's reminding me of a little bit is Huckleberry Finn, and because of the nature of Demon's continuous moving around in episodes with different unusual characters, and his voice and his problem with structures and rules and school, and so I'm getting a little Huck Finn out of that. I also getting a little dash of Holden Caulfield, and I know you're gonna be like, not again, but just to, like, his every now and then he says something that is really sarcastically funny about somebody, and also the way that he sometimes plays the adults to tell them things that they want to hear so that he can kind of sidestep what they're trying to funnel him towards. And so that's where I get a little teeny splash of Holden. But it is basically, this is a tough story. This is about a young boy who cannot catch a break in Appalachia. He, in his early life, he lives with his mom. Father is deceased before he was born, or early on. He doesn't know his father, and his mother is a troubled soul, and she, teenage mom, and not to get into any plot spoilers, but very early on in the story, Demon enters the foster care system, and everything that you would imagine that could be wrong is wrong. And he has failed again and again and again by the adults in his life. Some of these are just awful and abusive people. Some of them are well-meaning people, but they just don't understand the situation. They see what they want to see, or they're just too beaten down themselves to do what they ought to do or step up appropriately for this kid. And the story's being told from an adult Demon. I don't know how old he is because I haven't gotten that far, but he's looking back, and he's coming in with the story. It really picks up when he's about 10 or 11 years old, and he's telling the story about just the sequence of events, of places that he goes. He's a smart kid, he's talented, he's a great artist, but he's just, you shouldn't be beaten down by life when you're 11 years old, but he's really at risk of that here. And the glimmers of hope that he has along the way never seem to really pan out like they should for him. And I'm just, you become attached to him very fast, and you're rooting for him, and but it's scary to root for him because you feel like you're going to get your heart broken. So I'm reading it, I'm loving it, but it's very sad, and it's very frustrating, and it makes me angry, and all those good things in a book. So I'll have more to say about it next week. I'll be done by then, and we shall see. But so far, it's living up to all of the good things that I've heard about it as a book. My final thoughts yet to be determined. But that is what I'm reading right now. I don't know what I'm going to read next. I need to look and see what clubs and challenges and things are coming up next, or if I'm a free agent. So we'll see. But that's what I am reading. So I would love to hear your thoughts. If you have read Demon Copperhead, How High We Go in the Dark. I'm probably hearing from you if you've read Dangerous Liasons in the group, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on these other books. If you've read them, or you plan to read them, or what you're reading instead. And I would appreciate your comments. Please like and subscribe if you have not yet done so, and thank you if you did. And I hope that you have an excellent weekend. I will be back. I will probably do a tag on Tuesday, and I have not selected it. So if you know of some kind of super fun tag I should look at, you can tell me that too. And I will talk to you soon. Have a great weekend. Like I just said that. Have it anyway. Bye.